The first time I realized my marriage was dying, Jacqueline was planting roses in the backyard, dirt under her nails, a smile I hadn't seen in months. It was a Tuesday evening in late spring. I'd just come home from closing a property deal, my mind still on contracts and negotiations, when I found her in the flower bed we'd talked about for 3 years, but never built. Now suddenly, it existed. 12 rose bushes, all planted, watered, blooming with an optimism that hit me like a slap. "When did you do all this?" I asked, loosening my tie on the back porch, briefcase still in hand. She didn't look up. Her fingers moved with care, a tenderness I hadn't seen in a while. "Had some time this week." "Your new job giving you gardening hours now?" She glanced at me, dismissive. I took a personal day. Jacqueline had been working at Clearwater Industrial Laundry for 8 months. Before that, she'd been home, cooking elaborate meals I barely had time to eat, organizing closets, slowly losing herself to boredom. Her friend Diane had suggested the job one afternoon. "Just to get out," she'd said. "Meet people, have something that's yours." I'd supported it, thought I was being a good husband, encouraged her to find fulfillment outside the house. Now, that seemed so naive. "They're beautiful," I said, looking at the roses. Reds, yellows, whites arranged with care, like when we first bought the house and she filled every room with life. "They're mine," she replied, standing up and brushing dirt from her knees. She was wearing old jeans, ripped at the knees, and one of my college t-shirts. She looked younger somehow, happier. Not ours, mine. I should have known right then, should have recognized that pronoun as the warning it was. But I was tired from work, distracted by a contract dispute that needed resolution, and I let it slide. I let a lot of things slide in those days. That was my first mistake. Over the next month, Jacqueline bloomed like her roses. She started wearing makeup to work, just enough to make me notice. Foundation that smoothed her skin, mascara that made her eyes look bigger, lip gloss that caught the light when she smiled. She bought new clothes, professional ones, blouses with buttons that caught the light, pants that fit differently than the comfortable jeans she'd worn around the house for years. She talked about her job with a passion that made me remember why I'd fallen in love with her 12 years ago, when she worked as a line cook at a downtown restaurant, coming home at midnight smelling like garlic and olive oil, telling me stories about the kitchen chaos while I helped her out of her chef's coat. "Patrick says I have a real talent for operations management," she said one night at dinner. We were eating pasta, something simple she'd thrown together in 20 minutes instead of the elaborate meals she used to spend hours making. Meals where she'd use 3 pans and create everything from scratch, presenting it like a 5-star restaurant. Patrick, her boss. She'd mentioned him before, casually, like any coworker. Now his name appeared constantly, like punctuation. Patrick says this. Patrick thinks that. Patrick suggested a new approach to inventory management. "That's great," I said, twirling linguine on my fork. "Maybe you'll get that promotion you mentioned." "Maybe." She smiled into her wine glass, a secret smile that didn't involve me. "He's been really supportive. Says I have instincts for business that most people have to learn over years. He's been mentoring me, explaining the industry, introducing me to suppliers. He thinks I could run my own facility someday." We hadn't had intimacy in 6 weeks. I counted. Not out of spite, but because the absence of intimacy left a shape in our marriage, like a body pressed into snow. You could measure it, see exactly where something used to be, but wasn't anymore. You could trace the outline of what was missing. I reached across the table and touched her hand. She let me, but her fingers didn't curl around mine the way they used to. They just lay there, passive, tolerating my touch, but not returning it. waiting for me to finish whatever point I was trying to make. "We should do something this weekend," I said. "Just us. Maybe drive up to the lake house. We haven't been there since last summer. Remember how nice it was? We could grill out on the deck, take the boat out." "I'm working Saturday." "You're working on Saturday? I thought the laundry was closed on weekends." "We have a special project. Big hotel contract. Patrick needs all hands on deck." There was his name again. Patrick. Spoken with that little catch in her voice, that slight softness. "It's overtime, so the money's good. We could use it. We're doing fine financially. Still, it's good to have my own money." "My own money. Not our money. Mine." "Sunday then," I pressed. "I'm tired, Liam." She pulled her hand back and picked up her wine glass. "Can we just not plan everything? Some of us don't organize life like a legal brief. Some of us just want to exist without schedules and itineraries." The comment had teeth, sharp ones. I let it go because I didn't want to fight, and part of me wondered if she was right. I did plan everything. It was in my nature, ingrained by 3 years of law school and 5 years practicing real estate law before switching to real estate management. I approached life like a contract negotiation, always looking for the best terms, always planning for contingencies. Later that night, around 11, I heard her phone buzz in the bathroom. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. The sound of texts arriving. The little electronic chirp that means someone wants your attention right now. When she came out, her hair brushed, her face washed, she was smiling that smile again. The one I hadn't seen in months. The one that used to be for me, back when we were dating, when I could make her light up just by walking into a room. Now, it was for whoever was texting her at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I didn't ask. I should have. But I was afraid of the answer. The next morning, I woke up to find her side of the bed empty. I could hear her humming in the kitchen. Actually, humming. When I came downstairs, she was making breakfast in her bathrobe. Eggs, bacon, coffee already brewed. She looked radiant. "Morning," she said cheerfully, "Monsieur. You're up early?" "Couldn't sleep. Too much energy." She plated the eggs and brought them to the table. "I've been thinking. Maybe we should redo the backyard. Put in a real garden. Vegetables, herbs, more flowers. Make it our own little paradise." "Our," she said, "our." But the way she said it felt hollow, performative, like she was reading from a script. "That sounds nice," I said. "I'm excited about it. About lots of things, actually. Work is going so well. I feel like I'm finally finding myself, you know? Like I'm becoming who I was always meant to be." I ate my breakfast, nodded, and made appropriate sounds while my wife talked about becoming someone new. Someone who wasn't defined by being my wife. Someone independent, fulfilled, and separate. Someone who was leaving me, even though she was still sitting right there. Mike Torrance and I had been friends since law school. We met during orientation, bonded over our mutual hatred of contracts class, and stayed close even after graduation. He'd gone into immigration law, while I switched to real estate management after 3 years of courtroom frustration. The constant adversarial nature of litigation had worn me down. I preferred deals over disputes, negotiations over trials. Mike thrived on the fight. We balanced each other out. We still met for drinks every few weeks at a bar downtown called Murphy's, trading war stories and complaints about our careers. It was a dive bar with good whiskey and better privacy, the kind of place where lawyers went to vent about clients, judges, and the general unfairness of the legal system. "How's Jacqueline?" he asked during one of these sessions, sometime in early July. We were sitting in our usual booth, the one in the back corner where the lighting was dim and we could talk without being overheard. "Working a lot," I said, taking a pull from my beer. "Seems happy about it?" "At that laundry place?" "Yeah, Clearwater." His expression shifted. Something subtle like a door closing in another room. A muscle in his jaw tightened. He set down his beer carefully, deliberately, the way you set down something fragile. "Clearwater Industrial? The one on Route 7, out past the industrial park?" "That's the one." "Why? You know it?" Mike took a long pull from his beer, longer than necessary, the kind of drink you take when you're buying time to decide what to say. When he set the glass down, he didn't meet my eyes. "My Aunt Rosa works there, cleaning crew. Night shift mostly. Has for about 15 years. Small world." "Yeah." He drummed his fingers on the table, a nervous habit I'd seen during law school when he was working through difficult problems. "Listen, man, I wasn't going to say anything, but Rosa mentioned seeing your wife there, with the owner." My stomach went cold, not with anger, but with ice, the kind of cold that starts in your gut and spreads through your chest until your fingers feel numb. "Patrick?" She didn't know his name, just said she saw them in his office after hours. More than once. More than a few times, actually. Mike looked uncomfortable, like he was confessing something. Lights dim. Door closed. "She thought it was work stuff, but..." He trailed off. I waited, the silence stretching. Rosa's worked there 15 years. She knows what work meetings look like, and she says these didn't. She says the way they stood together, the way he touched her arm, the way she laughed. He stopped. "I'm sorry, man. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe Rosa's reading into things, but I thought you should know." I sat there processing. Around us, the bar noise continued. People laughing, music from the jukebox, life moving on while mine tilted off balance. I could hear every sound with perfect clarity, like my senses had sharpened in response to the threat. "When?" I asked. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. "About 2 weeks ago." Said it had been going on for a while, a couple months, maybe longer. She wasn't sure. He paused. "Could be nothing. Could be work stuff. But Rosa knows the difference between professional and personal. She's been married 40 years. She knows what attraction looks like." I finished my drink and ordered another. Tommy, the bartender, made small talk about the heat. I nodded, smiled, acted normal. Inside, I was running calculations, processing the facts, like I did with property deals, building a case. Mike watched me with the careful concern of someone who'd just detonated a bomb and was waiting to see what survived the blast. "Thanks for telling me," I said finally. "I'm sorry, Liam. I really am. I debated for days whether to say anything, but if it were my wife, I'd want to know. I'd want the chance to, I don't know, fix it maybe, or at least know the truth." "Don't be sorry. I'd rather know." But that was a lie. I'd rather have lived in ignorance. Ignorance is warm and comfortable and doesn't require you to make decisions that could destroy everything you've built. Ignorance lets you sleep at night. Knowledge demands action. Knowledge is a weight you have to carry forever. We finished our drinks in silence. When we left, Mike pulled me into a hug, something he'd never done before. "Whatever you decide to do," he said, "I'm here. Okay? You need anything? You call me." I drove home in a daze. The streets looked normal. The traffic lights changed on schedule. The world kept spinning, but my world had just stopped. When I got home, Jacqueline was already in bed, reading a book, some romance novel with a shirtless man on the cover. "How was Mike?" she asked without looking up. Fine, same as always. That's nice. I got ready for bed, brushed my teeth, changed into pajamas, slid under the covers next to my wife. She didn't move closer the way she used to, didn't curl into me, just kept reading her book about someone else's love story while ours died quietly between us. Jacqueline, I said. Are you happy? She finally looked at me. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy in our marriage, in your life, with me? She set down her book. Where is this coming from? Just answer the question. I don't know, I guess. As happy as anyone is after 12 years of marriage. She picked up her book again. Why? Are you unhappy? I didn't say that. Then why are you asking? I almost told her then. Almost said I know about Patrick. Almost demanded the truth. But something stopped me. Some instinct. Some understanding that once I asked that question, everything would change, and I needed to be ready for what came next. No reason, I said. Just curious. She went back to her book. I turned off my bedside lamp and lay in the dark, listening to her breathe, listening to pages turn, listening to my marriage ending 1 second at a time. I didn't confront Jacqueline, not yet. Years of legal training had taught me to never act without evidence, a strategy, and contingencies for every possible outcome. Good lawyers prepare, document, and build airtight cases before they make a move. So I watched. I documented. I became a ghost in my own home, observing her like a subject in a case study. I began noticing things I had missed before, the way she angled her phone when texting, turning her body so the screen wasn't visible, the perfume she wore on workdays, but never on weekends, something floral and expensive, the late meetings every Thursday, the satisfaction in her voice when she said Patrick's name, a warmth that was never there for me. I checked our cell phone records. As the account holder, I had access to everything. I downloaded 3 months of call logs and text records, hours of calls to one number, Patrick Montgomery. I cross-referenced the calls with her calendar. They lined up perfectly with her late meetings and overtime shifts. The texts were encrypted through an app, so I couldn't read them, but I could see the frequency, dozens per day. Often starting at 6 in the morning and continuing past midnight. I drove past Clearwater Industrial one Thursday at 8 p.m. Her car was there in the employee lot, her blue Honda Civic that she'd driven for 5 years, and refused to replace, even though I'd offered to buy her something newer. Next to it, in the owner's spot right by the front entrance, was a black Mercedes SUV with custom plates. The building was mostly dark except for one office on the second floor. The corner office, lights dim but not off. I sat in my car for 90 minutes, parked down the street where I could see both vehicles but wouldn't be noticed. I'd brought a thermos of coffee and a sandwich from home. I was prepared to wait as long as necessary. They came out together at 9:30. I watched through binoculars I'd bought that afternoon, telling the clerk I was going bird watching. Patrick was tall, maybe 6'2", well-dressed in expensive jeans and a fitted shirt that showed off broad shoulders. He had that confidence that comes from success, from never having to question your place in the world. He touched her back as they walked to their cars, his hand resting on the small of her back, familiar, proprietary. She leaned into it, tilted her head up, smiled. They talked for another 10 minutes in the parking lot. I couldn't hear them, but I could read the body language, the way she touched his arm, how they stood close, closer than colleagues, closer than friends. Then they kissed. Not a quick peck, a real kiss, the kind that meant something. His hands in her hair, her arms around his neck. It was like they were teenagers, not adults committing adultery in a parking lot. That's when I knew. Suspicion became fact. My marriage officially died, even though we'd keep pretending for a while longer. The rage came later, alone in my car on the drive home. Not the hot, explosive kind, but the cold, calculating kind. The kind that starts making lists, running scenarios, looking for leverage. I was a lawyer. I knew how to build a case, find weaknesses, destroy people legally, professionally, completely, without breaking a single law. And I was going to use every skill I had. I spent the next week reviewing our finances with surgical precision, every account, asset, and investment. I made spreadsheets, created timelines, and documented everything in detail. We bought the house 7 years ago for $320,000, a lot at the time. Now, it's worth almost triple that, around $800,000, thanks to the market and my improvements. The mortgage was in both our names, but I'd made every payment. Jacqueline hadn't worked until 8 months ago, and her salary barely covered groceries and gas. She contributed nothing to the mortgage, taxes, or improvements. I pulled our tax returns for the past 7 years. Her income was zero until this year. Mine had grown steadily, from $80,000 to $165,000. I supported everything, our house, cars, vacations, lifestyle, all me. I called Tom Henderson, a family law specialist. We worked together on a case years ago. He was sharp, ruthless when needed, and understood that divorce was war. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to protect their assets before a divorce, what would you advise? Hypothetically, Tom replied, knowing I wasn't speaking hypothetically. Document everything. Separate finances, open new accounts, transfer your paycheck. Community property laws are complicated, but if you can prove sole financial contribution, it helps. Why are you asking me this, Liam? Research project. Right, he said, skeptical. Look, don't do anything aggressive that could look like hiding assets, but you can protect yourself legally if you know what you're doing. And if there's more to it? And if there's infidelity? In this state, it doesn't affect the asset division much anymore. No-fault divorce laws changed that. But it matters outside the courtroom, public opinion, employment fallout, social consequences. These things can destroy people. He paused. Why do I feel like you're planning something? Because you're a good lawyer. Be careful, Liam. Revenge has a way of backfiring. I've seen it destroy people who thought they had everything figured out. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for justice. Same thing usually, just different packaging. I spent the next 2 weeks building my case like I was preparing for trial. I gathered every document proving I'd paid for our house, cars, and lifestyle. Bank statements, mortgage records, property taxes, insurance, utilities, credit card statements, tax returns showing her zero income while my salary grew, and employment records showing my continuous work history while she stayed home. Then, I reviewed the deed to our house, searching for any vulnerability that might allow her to claim equal ownership despite contributing nothing financially. And I found it. A clause added during refinancing 3 years ago, something our mortgage broker had suggested for tax purposes. It was buried in paragraph 17 of a 20-page document, the kind of legal language most people skim over. But it meant that, with the right paperwork and timing, I could transfer ownership of the house entirely into my name before filing for divorce. It would require Jacqueline's signature on one document. One single document buried in a stack of routine paperwork. The kind of paperwork spouses sign all the time without reading carefully, trusting their partner to handle the financial details. I felt sick and satisfied in equal measure. This was going to work. Patrick Montgomery owned Clearwater Industrial Laundry through a holding company, PMC Enterprises. I pulled his business records, public information from the Secretary of State's office, and various business databases. The operation was successful, grossing millions annually in contracts with hotels, hospitals, and restaurants across the Tri-County area. Good business, clean business on paper. But I knew better. No laundry operation that size could turn that kind of profit without cutting costs somewhere substantial. Labor was always the biggest expense in industrial operations. I'd seen the numbers in similar deals. The math didn't add up unless Patrick was paying workers well, below market rate, which meant he was either exploiting desperate people or using illegal labor. Probably both. I called Mike again. We met at a quieter bar, one on the edge of town where neither of us was likely to run into anyone we knew. Your Aunt Rosa. Is she legal? I asked. Why? Just answer the question, Mike. Yeah, she's got her green card. She's been legal for 20 years. Why are you asking? What about the rest of the staff at Clearwater? What's Rosa told you about them? Silence. Then, Liam, what are you doing? Research. What about the rest of them? Mike sighed heavily. I don't know specifics. Rosa doesn't talk much about it. She's careful, but she's mentioned a lot of the workers are scared. They don't speak much English. They work long hours for cash. They don't complain when the equipment breaks down, when supervisors are abusive, or when they don't get breaks. They just work. He paused. You're going after this guy, aren't you? I'm gathering information. This is dangerous territory. If you're planning what I think you're planning, I'm not planning anything illegal. You're planning something. I can hear it in your voice. You've got that lawyer tone, that calculated, strategic tone you used to use in contract negotiations back in law school. Another pause. Be careful. These kinds of people have resources. They have lawyers. They have connections. They can fight back. So do I. I started digging into Patrick's operation with the intensity of a prosecutor building a case. Hours spent online, researching public records, cross-referencing business licenses, tax filings, and employment records. I found patterns, irregularities, things that didn't add up. Payroll reports didn't match the number of workers Rosa said were employed. Cash flow didn't align with declared wages. Workers who didn't appear in official records, but who Rosa confirmed existed. People she saw every night. People who spoke only Spanish. People who looked terrified when anyone in a uniform approached the building. Patrick Montgomery was running his business on the backs of undocumented workers from Mexico and Central America. People who couldn't complain, couldn't report, couldn't fight back. People who'd take any wage, any condition, because the alternative was worse. It made him profitable, kept his costs low, and let him undercut competitors. It also made him vulnerable, catastrophically vulnerable. My brother-in-law, Daniel, worked for immigration and customs enforcement. He was Jacqueline's older brother, a serious man who'd gone into federal law enforcement after serving in the military. We weren't close, but we were cordial. I'd helped him with a property investment 2 years ago, and he owed me a favor. I took him to lunch in mid-August at a steakhouse downtown, a place where business deals happened over expensive cuts of meat. I need some information, I said after we ordered. Hypothetically, if a business was employing undocumented workers on a large scale, what would happen? Daniel studied me over his coffee, the direct stare of someone who could smell lies from a room away. Hypothetically, massive fines, potential criminal charges if willful intent is proven, business shutdown, asset seizure, prison time in extreme cases. He set down his cup. Why? Just curious about the law. You're a real estate guy, Liam. You don't get curious about immigration law unless you have a reason. He leaned forward. What's going on? If I gave you an address of a business I suspected was operating illegally, would you check it out? That's not how it works. We need complaints, evidence, probable cause. We can't just raid businesses based on anonymous tips or hunches. But if someone files a proper report, with documentation, witness statements, and enough evidence to justify action, we'd investigate. He paused. Is this about Jacqueline's work? I didn't answer directly. How would someone file that kind of report? There's a hotline, online forms, anonymous submissions are accepted, but they carry less weight. Reports with names and contact information get prioritized, especially if they include specific evidence. He set down his fork. Jesus, Liam, what did you find? Nothing yet. But if I find something, I'll let you know. He looked at me for a long moment. Be sure before you pull that trigger. Those kinds of investigations destroy lives, not just the owners. The workers, too. People get detained, deported, separated from families. Kids wake up and their parents are gone. It's not clean. It's not simple. There's always collateral damage. The people suffering now are the workers being exploited. True. But sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. He picked up his menu, signaling the conversation was over. Just make sure you can live with the consequences. Because once you set this kind of thing in motion, you can't stop it. It takes on a life of its own. I could live with the consequences. I was certain of it. Patrick had destroyed my marriage. I would destroy his life. Fair trade. In September, our mortgage came up for routine refinancing. Interest rates had shifted favorably over the summer, and I'd been planning to restructure the loan to save money over the life of the mortgage. Perfect timing. Almost too perfect. Like the universe was conspiring to give me exactly what I needed when I needed it. I prepared the paperwork myself, using my real estate management experience to navigate the bureaucracy. I knew the forms, the language, and exactly what needed to be signed, and what could be buried in routine documentation where no one would notice unless the problem they were looking for it. Hidden in the stack of refinancing documents on page 17 of a 23-page packet was the transfer deed, the one that would shift ownership of our house entirely into my name. It looked like standard boilerplate, cross-collateralization clauses, subordination agreements, warranty provisions, transfer of beneficial interest, legal jargon that makes normal people's eyes glaze over. And buried in there, carefully worded to sound routine, was the transfer of ownership from joint tenancy to sole ownership. From our house to my house. I need you to sign these, I told Jacqueline one evening in mid-September. I kept my voice casual, almost bored, like I was asking her to take out the trash. Refinancing stuff, better rates, should save us about $300 a month on the mortgage payment. She was texting on her phone, probably Patrick. She'd been texting constantly lately, not even trying to hide it. Her thumbs moved quickly, and she smiled. There are about 12 places that need your signature. I've marked them with those little yellow tabs. Just show me where. I did. I watched her sign her name 12 times without reading a word. Years of trusting me with our finances, managing every practical aspect of our life while she focused elsewhere, had made her careless. Or maybe the affair had distracted her too much to care about something as mundane as mortgage paperwork. Maybe she was thinking about Patrick while she signed away her claim to our house, mentally composing her next text to him, counting the hours until they could meet again. Either way, she signed. Her handwriting was neat, practiced, the signature she'd used since she was 16. Jacqueline Walsh, the name she'd worn for 12 years. The name she was now using to sign away her future without even realizing it. Done? She asked, handing me back the pen without looking up from her phone. Done. She went back to her texting, back to Patrick, back to the life she was building without me, while still living in my house, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, using my resources. I felt nothing. That scared me more than the anger had. The absence of feeling was like a void, a black hole where love used to be. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt conflicted. Instead, I felt nothing except a cold satisfaction that my plan was working. I filed the paperwork the next day at the county recorder's office. It would take about 3 weeks to process completely. 3 weeks until the house was legally, entirely, indisputably mine. 3 weeks until I could execute the next phase of my plan. 3 weeks until Jacqueline would learn what betrayal really cost. By early October, I had everything I needed. The house was legally mine, though Jacqueline didn't know it yet. The deed had been recorded. The ownership had transferred. I had documentation of her affair. Photographs of her and Patrick together, call logs showing hundreds of hours of communication, witness testimony from Rosa that I'd carefully collected through Mike. I had leverage over Patrick through his business practices, detailed records of his illegal labor operation, evidence that would destroy him if properly deployed. All the pieces were arranged like chess pieces on a board. I just needed to execute the combination that would lead to checkmate. I chose a Thursday for my move. Jacqueline's late meeting night, the night she stayed at the office until 9 or 10, supposedly working on inventory reports or contract negotiations or whatever lie she was telling me that week. The night she actually spent in Patrick's office, doing things I tried not to imagine in detail. I called Patrick's office at 4 p.m. His secretary answered, professional and polite. PMC Enterprises, how may I help you? I need to speak with Mr. Montgomery, I said, keeping my voice level and businesslike. It's regarding his relationship with Jacqueline Walsh. There was a pause. A long pause. I could hear computer keys clicking in the background. Someone typing something. Who's calling, please? Her husband. Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear the secretary's brain processing, trying to figure out how to handle this situation, whether to put me through or claim Patrick was unavailable. Please hold. Patrick came on the line 2 minutes later. His voice was smooth, controlled, the voice of a man used to managing difficult situations, used to talking his way out of problems. Mr. Walsh, how can I help you? We need to talk, in person, tonight. I'm not sure what we have to discuss. I think you do. 6 p.m., the coffee shop on Maple Street, the one across from the old courthouse. If you don't show, my next call is to ICE about your staffing practices at Clearwater. My next call after that is to your wife about your relationship with my wife. Your choice. Silence. I could hear him breathing, could almost hear him thinking, calculating, running through options like a computer processing data. 6 p.m., he said finally. He hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from anticipation. This was what justice felt like when you took it into your own hands. It felt like power. It felt like control. It felt like I was finally doing something instead of just watching my life fall apart around me while I did nothing. I arrived at the coffee shop at 5:30, ordered a black coffee, and sat in the back corner booth where I could see the entrance. I had a thick folder with me, packed with everything I'd collected on Patrick Montgomery over the past 2 months. Business records showing discrepancies, immigration violations documented in detail, photographs of his workers at shift changes, witness statements from Rosa, carefully worded with Mike's help to protect her while still providing damning evidence, financial analysis showing his profits were only possible through exploitation. I waited, sipping my coffee, watching the door. Patrick arrived at 6:15, deliberate in his lateness, a power move, showing me he wasn't intimidated. He wasn't concerned. He wasn't going to be pushed around by an angry husband who had discovered his wife's affair. He was tall, maybe 6'2", dressed in expensive casual clothes, jeans that probably cost $300, a tailored button-down shirt. He had the kind of rugged handsomeness that came from good genetics and better grooming, salt and pepper hair styled with product, a watch that cost more than my car payment, maybe more than my car. The kind of watch that said, "I'm successful, and I want you to know it." I understood why Jacqueline had been attracted to him. He represented everything I wasn't, flashy where I was understated, commanding where I was analytical, dangerous where I was safe. The kind of man who made women feel alive, seen, like they were starring in their own movie. He sat down across from me without ordering anything, keeping his sunglasses on inside. Another power move, trying to maintain control through body language. "You have 15 minutes, he said. His voice was clipped, businesslike, like he was doing me a favor by showing up. "I'll need 5. I slid the folder across the table. "This is a summary of your employment practices at Clearwater. Number of undocumented workers, cash payment records, names and addresses of people who would testify if properly protected by immigration authorities. Financial analysis showing your profit margins are only possible with illegal labor. Witness statements from long-time employees." He didn't open the folder, didn't even look at it, just stared at me through his sunglasses. "You're bluffing." "My brother-in-law works for ICE. My friend's aunt has worked at your facility for 15 years and is willing to testify. I have photographs of workers entering and leaving your facility at shift changes. I have bank records showing cash withdrawals that match your payroll periods but don't align with your tax filings. I have testimonies ready to be filed through official channels." I leaned forward. "I'm not bluffing. I'm giving you a choice. Which is? End things with my wife. Tonight. Completely. Never contact her again. Fire her if you have to, but make it look legitimate. Give her a severance package so she doesn't suspect I was involved. Make up whatever story you need to make it convincing." I paused. "Do that, and this folder stays with me. I never filed a complaint. I never talked to my brother-in-law about your operation. I never contact your wife about your affair. You walk away clean." Patrick's jaw tightened. I saw the muscle working beneath his skin, his only sign of reaction. He took off his sunglasses and looked at me directly. His eyes were cold, calculating. "And if I don't?" "Then tomorrow morning ICE raids your facility. Your business collapses. Your wife finds out about Jacqueline. Your kids find out their father is a cheater who exploits vulnerable people for profit. Your whole life implodes." I kept my voice level, reasonable, like I was explaining contract terms. "You've built something impressive. You have a family, 3 kids, right? 2 in high school, 1 in college. You have a reputation in this community. You're on the Chamber of Commerce board. You sponsor little league teams. You have a house worth $2 million, a vacation home in the mountains. Walk away from my wife, and you keep all of it. Keep your business, your family, your reputation. All you have to do is end one affair." He stared at me, calculating. This was a business decision for him, just like everything else. Jacqueline became a cost-benefit analysis, and suddenly the cost was too high. I saw it happening in his eyes, the shift from defiance to acceptance, the realization that I had him cornered with no good options. "You're threatening me," he said quietly. "I'm offering you a deal. You're a businessman. You understand deals. This is a good deal for you. Walk away from one woman, keep everything else. That's a winning proposition by any metric. You'd be an idiot not to take it. She'll ask questions. She'll want to know why I ended things. Suddenly. That's your problem. You're creative. You're charismatic. You've been lying to your wife for months, probably years. I'm sure you can figure out how to lie to mine. Tell her you're worried about your marriage. Tell her you realized it was a mistake. Tell her the risk is too high. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. Just end it. Patrick stood up slowly. He picked up the folder, flipped through it briefly, his face showing nothing. I'd organized it well. Tabs, marking different sections, highlighted passages showing the most damning evidence. Then he set it back down, carefully, precisely centered on the table between us. You're going to lose her anyway, he said quietly. Even if I end it, even if I walk away, your marriage is over. You know that, right? This isn't about saving your relationship. This is about revenge, about making everyone hurt as much as you're hurting. Maybe, but you'll lose everything. I'll just lose her. And honestly, I already have. He studied me for a long moment. You're colder than I expected. She talked about you sometimes, said you were analytical, detached. I didn't realize how much. You don't know anything about me, and you're about to know even less about my wife. He walked out without another word, didn't take the folder, left it sitting there on the table between us like evidence at a crime scene. I sat there for another 20 minutes, drinking coffee that had gone cold, watching people come and go through the coffee shop. Normal people. People buying lattes and chatting with friends and checking their phones. People whose lives weren't falling apart. People who weren't sitting in coffee shops blackmailing their wives' lovers. Outside, the October evening was cooling down. Leaves were starting to turn orange and red and yellow. Everything was dying beautifully, the way things do in autumn. The whole world was ending and beginning again, and I was right there with it. I'd just destroyed a man's affair with my wife. Soon I'd destroy his business too, because I wasn't done. Not even close. Jacqueline came home at 10:30 that night. I was waiting in the living room, lights off, sitting in the leather chair by the window. I'd been sitting there for hours, thinking, planning, waiting, watching the headlights of cars pass on the street outside, counting the seconds until my wife came home from her lover. Liam? She turned on the light. Why are you sitting in the dark? You scared me. Long day. How was work? Fine. She set down her purse on the entry table. She looked tired, or maybe sad. It was getting harder to read her expressions, like she was becoming a stranger, like the woman I'd married had been replaced by someone who looked like her, but wasn't. I'm going to bed. Did you have a meeting with Patrick tonight? She froze. Just for a second, barely perceptible, but I caught it. Years of reading people in negotiations had trained me to watch for those micro-expressions, those tiny tells that revealed what people were really thinking. Yes. Why? How's he doing? He's fine. Why are you asking about Patrick? Just making conversation. I stood up slowly. I understand. You want me to write shorter and slow down the pace. Let me continue with a more concise, tighter approach. Stretching. I'm curious about your boss. You mention him a lot. Not that much. His name comes up 4 or 5 times a day. That seems like a lot. Her expression shifted. Defensive. Guilty. Are you tracking my conversations? Should I be? What is this, Liam? I could have confronted her then, but I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, the confusion, the slow realization. Nothing, I said. Go to bed. Patrick would end things soon. She'd be devastated. Then I'd make my move. 3 days later, Sunday morning, Jacqueline's phone rang at 7 a.m. She answered. Hello? Her voice changed. What? What do you mean? I pretended to sleep, listening. Her voice went from confused to desperate to hurt. But why? Why now? Listening. That's not fair. She stopped. I see. She hung up, sat there shaking. Then went to the bathroom. I heard the shower. Heard her crying. She didn't leave the bedroom for hours. I need to go out, she said at noon. Her eyes were swollen. She wasn't back until 8. When she returned, she looked shattered. What happened? I asked. Nothing. Jacqueline, you've been gone all day. I said nothing. She pushed past me. Monday she called in sick. Tuesday too. Wednesday I heard her throwing up. Saturday, 1 week after Patrick ended things, she came to me. I need to tell you something, she said. We sat at the kitchen table. I've been having an affair with Patrick. 5 months. Her voice was mechanical. He ended it Sunday, said it was a mistake. I let the silence hang. What? I said, finally. I know I don't deserve sympathy, but I need you to know it's over. He ended it, I corrected. You'd still be with him otherwise. She flinched. Please, Liam. I want to fix this. Counseling. Whatever you need. I looked at my wife. Felt nothing. We can't fix this. Please. 12 years has to mean something. It meant something to me. Not to you. That's not fair. You lied to me every day. Don't talk about fair. I'm sorry. There's nothing to say. I stood. I want a divorce. You're not even going to try? Why would I? Because we're married. You made your choice. That's not my problem. I love you. You don't love me. You love what I provided. I walked out, leaving her crying. Friday, I had divorce papers delivered. She called 17 times. I didn't answer. She texted, "We need to talk about the house." I replied, "The house is mine. Check the deed." She called immediately. "What do you mean?" "I own it. You signed transfer papers in September." "The refinancing papers?" "Transfer papers. It's legal." Silence. "You tricked me." "I protected my assets. You should have read what you signed." "I trusted you." "And I trusted you. You have 30 days to move out." "You can't do this." "I already did. Call your brother Daniel. Ask him what happens when ICE investigates businesses." "What did you do?" "What you did to me. I destroyed something you loved." I hung up. Wednesday morning, Patrick's business got raided. Daniel had called the night before. "The raid's tomorrow, 6 a.m. At 7, it was the lead story. ICE agents, workers detained, Patrick arrested, 37 workers detained. Patrick charged with employing undocumented immigrants, conspiracy, tax evasion. His business finished. His wife filed for divorce, his reputation destroyed. I'd won. Mike called a week later. Rosa got deported. Issue with her green card from 20 years ago. She's back in Mexico. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry. Are you? Rosa was collateral damage. She worked 15 years, building a life. Now she's gone because you needed leverage. I didn't know. You didn't care. Hope it was worth it. He hung up. I sat there sick. Rosa had tried to help me, and I'd destroyed her life. Patrick's wife, his kids, 23 deported workers, 14 who lost jobs, all because my wife had an affair. 2 weeks later, Jacqueline moved out. Her lawyer tried fighting the house transfer. The paperwork was solid. She moved to her mother's place. I watched from the window as they loaded boxes, her clothes, her books, her roses. She dug up each rose carefully, loaded them like children into the truck. Before leaving, she knocked. I just want you to know, she said. What I did was wrong. But what you did, you destroyed 2 lives. Patrick's too, his wife, his kids, all those workers. Good, I said. She flinched. You've become someone I don't recognize. You became that person first. This cruelty isn't who you are. You don't get to tell me who I am." She turned and walked away. I watched her drive off, watched my marriage end. The house felt enormous. Every room echoed. I'd expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt haunted. Her presence was everywhere: the kitchen, the bedroom, the backyard. I'd won. Patrick destroyed. Jacqueline broken. I had my house, my assets. But victory tasted like ashes. Friends called. Some sided with me. Others thought I'd gone too far. Some stopped calling. Work became my refuge. 12-hour days. Came home to empty house. Ate takeout. Went to bed alone. Mike showed up one evening. "Can I come in?" He looked around at the emptiness. "Place looks cold," he said. We sat in silence. "Rosa's with her sister in Guadalajara. Her kids are trying to get her back. Could take years." "I'm sorry. You got what you wanted. Patrick's destroyed. Jacqueline's miserable. Mission accomplished. It doesn't feel like I thought." Revenge never does. He drank. "Rosa felt sorry for you because you gave up everything, your marriage, your friends, your humanity, just to hurt people. Now that you're alone in this house, realizing revenge doesn't fill the void. It makes it bigger." He was right. "I came to tell you I can't be your friend anymore. What you did to Rosa, those workers, Patrick's kids, I can't support that." He stood. "I hope someday you realize what you lost. Not just Jacqueline. Everything that made you human." He left. I sat alone, master of my domain, owner of my victory, and realized I'd lost everything that mattered. Weeks later, a letter arrived. From Jacqueline, handwritten. She'd moved to Colorado, working at a restaurant, starting over. "I hope you realize we both destroyed our marriage," she wrote. "I did it with betrayal. You did it with vengeance. Neither of us can claim moral high ground. I hope someday you find whatever humanity you lost. I hope you realize that revenge destroys everyone it touches." I read it 3 times, then burned it, watching her words turn to ash. She was wrong. I'd protected myself. That wasn't cruelty. That was justice. But, late at night, alone in bed, I wondered if she was right. Spring returned. Anniversary of the roses came. I stood in the backyard, empty spaces where roses grew, grass reclaiming the ground. The divorce was final. House was mine. Patrick took a plea deal, lost everything. Jacqueline in Colorado, starting over. Rosa in Mexico. I'd won. Completely. I stood there, master of my domain, architect of my revenge, utterly alone. I could sell the house. Start over. But I didn't want to. This house was my victory. Proof that actions have consequences. This house was my monument. It was also my prison. I went inside, made dinner for one, ate in silence, went to bed alone. I'd proven I was smarter, more ruthless, more strategic. I'd won, and in winning, I'd lost everything that mattered. But I wouldn't admit it. I'd made my choices. I'd executed my plan. I'd gotten my revenge, and I'd live with the consequences forever. Alone in this house, victorious and empty. Because revenge doesn't just destroy your enemies, it destroys you too. I just refused to admit it. I stood at the window looking at the backyard where roses used to grow, where my wife used to smile, where my marriage used to exist. Empty now. Just like me. That was the real price. Not losing what you love, but becoming someone who can't love anymore. I closed the curtain, closed my eyes, closed whatever was left of my heart. Victory felt like drowning.